You can know what you want, you can know what you should be doing, but how do you make yourself do it when the feelings and the motivation isn't there? When all you got is fear? And so we make decisions with feelings. 95% of our decisions are made by how you feel in the moment. And that is the problem. You need to take control of the moment and leverage the power of your decisions and make them up here. Do you feel like making that cold call? No, you don't. Do you feel like doing that third set of reps? No, you don't. Do you feel like having that hard conversation? No, you don't. Do you feel like ending this relationship, whether it's in business or in your life, that is sucking you dry? No, you don't. We make decisions based on our feelings, and that is robbing you of joy and opportunity. And it is blinding you from the fact that how you change your life is one 5-second decision at a time, one push at a time. And if you accept the fact that you may never feel ready, and you may never feel motivated, and you may never feel confident, you may never feel courageous, and that's okay, but you can still push yourself forward. What happens over time is, as you start to see yourself becoming the person that takes action, you start to see yourself becoming the kind of person that speaks even though your voice is shaking. You're the kind of person that has a bias toward moving instead of a bias toward thinking. Guess what happens? You build the skill of confidence and courage. There's a 5-second window between the instincts, the shoulds, the urges, the inner wisdom, the things that can change your life if you listen to it. You've got a 5-second window from the moment you feel that instinct to move. And if you don't, your brain is actually designed to kill it. 5 seconds is all you have. The second you hesitate, and you feel yourself hesitating, that is a moment of huge power, because what's happened is you've just started to pull back from something that you need to lean into. So when you feel yourself hesitate, you're triggering your mind that something's up. Like Lewis didn't hesitate when he pulled on his pants. He didn't hesitate when he's drinking his coffee. He didn't hesitate when he walked out the door to the gym, but now he's hesitating to make that call. Your mind now goes into a cognitive bias called the spotlight effect. It magnifies whatever it was that you hesitated doing. And the moment, like all of a sudden you're like, hey, I don't feel like it. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll do it later. And your mind is doing it because your mind's trying to protect you. Hesitation signals a red flag to your mind that something's up. Just that small hesitation. It's a habit that we all have. Should you hesitate on making a phone call? No. Should you hesitate on speaking up in a meeting? No. Should you hesitate when you feel yourself starting to procrastinate and you know you got work that you should get done? No, you shouldn't hesitate at all. Should you hesitate in saying the thing that you really feel in your heart? No, you shouldn't. Should you hesitate and edit yourself when you're talking? No, you shouldn't. But we've all trained ourselves to. So it's actually this habit of hesitating. You start catching yourself. It's a huge moment of power because you have a decision to make, and you got to make it in the next 5 seconds. Are you going to go on autopilot and get trapped in your mind? Or are you going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and awaken your prefrontal cortex and drive forward?
Success does not come from making a few major important decisions correctly. And in fact, it's very much the opposite. The truth is, success happens when you make the smallest, seemingly easiest, apparently most insignificant decisions correctly, consistently, every day for a long time. Let me give you an example. If you have a burger today, you won't be unhealthy tomorrow. And in the moment, having one burger won't seem to matter. In fact, it doesn't really matter. And if you have a burger every single day this week, you probably still won't be unhealthy. But in a year's time, after eating a burger every single day, you'll be a burger. And we all make thousands of tiny decisions every single day, and these small decisions seem like they don't matter, but in fact, they are all that matters. And these small decisions compound over time to define who you are right now. And you are, right now, a product of the billions of unimportant, tiny decisions you have made in your life. And this idea is called the slight edge. And right now, when it comes to your health, finances, career, everything, the slight edge is either working for you or against you. And you'll find out in a year. And although it sounds simple to take control of these small, easy decisions, the reality is things that are easy to do are also very easy not to do. And for me, the way to take control is to have a very clear vision of who you want to be 1 year from now, 2 years from now, and ask yourself in the moment, is this decision, browsing Instagram for hours, eating McDonald's, partying, going to move me closer to that person, or further away. And you have to have faith that there's something always working in the background for all of us right now that we cannot see.
We think in the short term, like, I'm not getting enough attention, I'm not being appreciated, I'm not getting paid enough. We think about all these minor concerns because we're worried it's gonna hurt us in the long term. And really that's just distracting us from doing the work that is ultimately the only reason anyone is remembered for anything. Yeah. What matters is, did you make something that stands the test of time, and did you keep working at it past when everyone else would have given up and said, like, it's on to the next thing, or, you know, I'll do this other thing because I can make more money or whatever. Like, you've gotta stay at it and stay at it and stay at it long past whenever the ego gets bored. You always want to be the harshest critic of your own work, right? Like, is this good enough? Am I saying something new enough? Is this original enough? You know, and am I pushing myself to be real and vulnerable and honest? Like, when James Altucher says you got to say the thing that you're afraid to say, no one else can hold you to that stand. Like, no one else can be like, oh, you're afraid to say that, because only you know what you're afraid of.
The truth is that you're never gonna feel ready to make these changes. You're never gonna feel like doing them, but you can always make a decision. That's always in your control. Staying with somebody that treats you like garbage is a decision. It is. Staying at a job that you hate is a decision. Staying in the body that you are not proud of is a decision. Is it going to be easy? No, it's not going to be easy to change. It's simple. Do a Google search and then use the 5-second rule to force yourself to do that stuff. Change comes down to 5-second decisions, and this is why the 5-second rule is important for everybody to know. It's your job to push yourself. And I don't care if you're Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., or you're Michelangelo, or you're Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton, you will struggle with self-doubt. And everybody that you admire, everybody, and the list is the same for everybody. Oh, Oprah Winfrey, and I want to be like, Tom, and I want to be like, Branson, and I want to be like Jay-Z, and I want, like, everybody's list is this, Bill Gates, and do you know what those people do? They do not have the habit of hesitating. They trust themselves. None of us wake up and say, today is the day I destroy my life. What we do is we kind of check out because it feels overwhelming. Or we check out because we're afraid. Or we check out because we start listening to self-doubt. And then we make these teeny tiny decisions all day long. We don't even realize it. Decision to not get up on time, a decision to not eat the right thing, a decision to snap at your kids, a decision to not speak in a meeting, a decision to not look for a job, a decision to not deal with your finances, a decision to not call your parents, like whatever it is. All day long, these tiny decisions that take you so far off track. And then you wake up like I did and you look at your life and you think, how the hell did I get here?
Success and failure does not happen in the moment. Everything is bleeding into everything else. So the bad decisions that you make today have a ripple effect that can last for weeks or months, okay? Let me give an explanation. Let's say that you fail to manage your time and you go to bed late. You get a bad sleep. Right off the bat, maybe you can catch a cold from that, or you can get sick. Then you can't get the things done that you wanted to get done because you had a cold or you're sick, or maybe you fuck up a social relationship. Then what happens is maybe you fuck up something with your work that creates some kind of financial problem. Unless you were born in a situation with a lot of opportunity, everything is gonna be tough, okay? Again, unless you were born in a situation where you have a lot of opportunity because your parents had money and raised you well, everything is just gonna be fucking tough. Where's the other choice? When you're at that point, what are your decisions? Let's stop and think about this. A, you're born into success. If you're born into success, lucky for you. Just follow the beaten path that your parents laid out for you, and you could probably be successful. But what happens if you weren't born into success? Pretty much, you're gonna have to fucking crawl through the shit for years and years and try to enjoy it as you do it and make something out of it. That's pretty much the decision. Or you can just stay in the shit. At a certain point, what you have to do is you have to look at your life and you have to say, do I accept this or do I not accept it? Okay, you have to look at that. And you have to make a decision. So look at your life. Now ask yourself, what direction is my life going in? Like, if I look at what I'm doing right now, what direction is this gonna lead me in? Like, there's no future where it's gonna get any easier. Do you guys get that? It's not gonna get easier. In fact, generally speaking, there's no this, okay? It doesn't stay the same. You're either going a little bit up, you're going fast up, you're going a little bit down, or you're going fast down.
Shitty things are going to happen to you if they haven't already, and I'm sure they have. Many tragedies have befallen every person in this room. And what I want you guys to recognize right now is thank God. Because those are the things that weed out the sick and the weak. Those are the things that weed out the people who they don't have the fortitude to see it through. And I'm here to tell you that something is the ability to endure. My ability to handle suffering, my ability to keep going when something is boring, my ability to learn a new skill long after everybody else has gotten over it and gotten bored and they are no longer interested. All I can see is its utility. And in seeing its utility and becoming obsessed with what that thing is going to allow me to do, I endure. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how painful it is, if it lives in service of my goals, I do it. And that was the one thing nobody could see. That was the one thing when I was a kid nobody could understand. The questions you ask yourself will determine the course of your life. I had been asking myself, what do I need to do to get rich? And it left me really unhappy. So I changed the question, and I started asking, what would I do and love every day, even if I were failing? The second law of thermodynamics is that everything moves towards entropy. Life is chaos. It takes an inhuman amount of effort to bring order to that, to find success in the middle of that. So while I cannot promise you success, I can promise you failure. I cannot promise you happiness, but I can promise sadness. So if you know those are the guarantees and the other things are the things that you have to strive for, you better be striving in service of something that in and of itself is interesting to you.
And so I was going through, I was just going through the motions of continuing to climb the ladder. And there were these guys who I really aspired to be like, and I had this whole plan laid out for myself, right? I was gonna be a vice president by age 32, a senior vice president by age 35, a C-level executive by age 40, and then you're set, right? But as I climbed this ladder, I got closer to these guys and realized that many of them were kind of miserable. Yeah, they were on their third marriage. My boss had his second heart attack. I worked with a guy who was 30 years old. He was 3 years older than me, who had his first heart attack at age 30. And so, of course, what I tell myself, but I'll be different, right? I'm not gonna be like those guys. But if you follow the same recipe, you're going to get the same pie that they've baked. And so I realized, you know what? I need to make some changes, but I don't know what. And then I realized I was so focused on so-called success and achievement, and especially on the accumulation of stuff, the trophies of success. Like, look at me, I have 2 Lexuses, and I have this, I have that, I have the bigger house, and
the golf membership, or whatever, you know.
Yeah, the racket club membership,
there
actually.
You go.
Yeah. And so I had these things, and here's the thing I want to get across. So there's nothing inherently wrong with stuff. We all need some stuff. The problem isn't consumption. The problem is this compulsory consumption. Buying things because that's what we think we're supposed to do. We've been sold this meme of the American dream. If you get this, then you will be happy, as if there is a template for happiness. And in fact, I think that's one of the bigger problems is we are chasing happiness. And for the longest time, that's what I did. I chased happiness.
Whenever we have our highest experiences of life, 2 things are involved. Some form of growth within ourselves and some form of contribution beyond ourselves. Yeah. I could ask 100 people, as I've done this with thousands, and they always tell me something where they faced the fear, overcame something, but also in doing it, it benefited their family or benefited somebody else, or like what you did with the building. Whenever I ask people the worst experiences of their life, they will tell me something, and it was all about them. Life's not about me, it's about we. And that's also why when people are suffering, it's always because you're obsessing about yourself. You're obsessing that something happened and now you have less. You think you have less. Right. Or something happened and you've lost something, lost love, lost money, lost significance, lost attention, lost something. Or because you did this or said that, or because I did something myself, I'm never gonna have something. Lost, less, never are the sources of suffering. When you get that all suffering is obsession with self, you can snap out of it, and all you have to do is stop expecting and start appreciating. You look around and appreciate things outside yourself, the people around you, your friends sitting across here, anything of that nature, and then starting to enjoy something. If you start to learn or grow from that, if you love, which to me is an action, if you love, if you give, if you're grateful, suffering disappears instantly. But you have to tell yourself the truth. The only suffering is in your mind. It's because this brain is not designed to make you happy. It's 2 million years old. It's designed to make you survive.
Trying to actually be grateful for what you have, things that you would have killed like a year earlier to have, as soon as you have them, all of a sudden you think about how they could be better. And I think you've written about this a lot, but gratitude is incredibly important, not just because it's what you owe other people, but it makes you appreciate what you have versus focusing on what you could have or don't have, which are egotistical things and also recipes for misery. Mm-hmm. I have a chapter in the book. There's this famous speech from John Boyd, and he would say this to every one of his young proteges. He would say, "To do or to be, being promoted and rising to responsibility and power." And being recognized is not the same and is not as important as doing great work and affecting change behind the scenes. So it's like we become so obsessed with, being promoted or being recognized or getting credit. Right. It's like people would rather be a bestseller than write an amazing book.
You got to figure out where you want to be this year. For the next 12 months, figure out where you want to be and what you'd like to build for the future. So if you're not thinking about why you're doing something for this year and how it's going to support you for the coming years, then you're missing the point. You're always going to have to figure some new vision out every single year. So otherwise you're just doing random things and getting frustrated because you feel like you have no sense of purpose if you don't have a vision. So you're just randomly going through life if you don't have a vision. So again, a life without purpose is setting you up for a life of unfulfillment.
If you're living in a community and the resources aren't there, I challenge you to get on the bus and go to the library on the other side of town. I challenge you to go and learn the Handel's Messiah. I challenge you, to pick up a piano, to pick up a violin. I challenge you to not accept the life that's been given to you. Just because somebody gave you that life, that does not have to become your reality. I challenge you to go outside of your immediate environment, and I challenge you to explore. I challenge you to discover. I challenge you to learn a second language. I challenge you to watch PBS, NPR radio. Like, I challenge you to get out of just that world that you've been given. I challenge you to read books, to learn the history of this company. Like, I challenge you to be bigger, bolder, and better 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And some of the people that we admire are people who have been exposed to things that other people haven't been exposed to. I think what people get confused is, they're grinding with a goal. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have goals, but you should be grinding for grinding's sake. You should grind because that's what you do. You're passionate about what you do, and so you're waking up every day with this concept of, I have 24 hours. And they're mine. This 24 hours belongs to me. And whatever I do in this 24 hours will determine where I'll be tomorrow and the next day. And I think that's what people need to focus on. Like, get off of this, I want to make 6 figures. I want to drive this car. I want to live in this house. I think what people should be focusing on is, I have 24 hours. Like, Oprah only has 24. Bill Gates only has 24. Like, Warren Buffett only has 24 hours. And in that 24-hour period, I can either break my life or make my life. I just think that goals for people is too high on the priority list. And I think what should be on the priority list is going to bed so you can wake up the next day and you can grind it out. And I'm just a dude that believes you reap what you sow. So if you're grinding on Monday, grinding on Tuesday, grinding on Wednesday, if you're grinding 6-7 days a week for a span of 5 or 6 years, something's got to come out of that.
And what I found is that instead of trying to live a successful life, if you aim to have a successful day, 12, if you have 13 out of the 24 hours of your day, if you won those hours, you won the day. And if you win most of the days in a week, you won the week. We just need a simple majority here, right? If you win, most of the weeks in a month, there you go. Most of the months in a year, most of the years in a life. And all of a sudden, look at that. Without even trying, you've been able to kind of get somewhere.
People misunderstand money. Okay, just like fundamentally. And it's actually not money. They misunderstand themselves. They misunderstand what they actually want. What people want is fulfillment. What people want is to feel good. And they think that, wow, if I had and here's the truth. What they know is when they buy something, it does feel good. Right. And they know, if I could buy my mom a house, like that would feel good. If I could buy her a big house, a fancy car, make me feel good. And it is all 100% true. Buying a fancy car will make you feel good. Buying a big house will make you feel good. But it makes you feel good the way a bowl of ice cream makes you feel good. It's momentary happiness. It's transient. It will go away. The hedonic reset point. So you buy the big house and all of a sudden that's normal, baby. And so you really have to stop and A, remind yourself to be grateful for that, but B, recognize that all the things you thought money was gonna bring you, it brings you something completely different. And if you want fulfillment is about being something, becoming something. It's born of suffering. It is not born of having a cool car, because you want a cool car because of the way you want other people to look at you.
Right, and the way that will make you feel when you think that they look at you like that.
Exactly. So it's tenuous at best. And it hinges entirely on them actually looking at you that way. So now you're somebody else's pawn, because they can turn on you at any minute. So that's never gonna bring you lasting fulfillment. It's not stable. It doesn't make you feel strong and rooted. But becoming somebody, setting your sights on gaining certain skill sets, of feeling a certain way, of being calm, being, full of gratitude, like all the things from a neurochemical standpoint that we read as good, none of money can't touch those things. So working on what I call framework happiness is the key to all that stuff, and money can't give you framework happiness.
I made the decision, it's the most important decision I believe of your life, that I'm not gonna suffer anymore. Life's too short to suffer, and I'm gonna live in a beautiful state every day. And the way I do it is, I catch myself when I start to get that sense of stress, I let it go, and I see the idea go by. So your thoughts about this person messing up your business or not following through. If I was in a room with 10,000 people, I guarantee you 60, 70% of the business owners have the same thoughts at times, right? I ask people all the time, tell me your most stressful thought. Oh, I'm worried about my children, this may happen. How many people have had that thought? Everybody. I might not make it financially, blah, blah, blah. How many have had that? Everybody. My point is, it's not your thought. It's the mind, not your mind. When you think it's your mind, you identify with it, and you can't separate from yourself. Right. But when you realize, these thoughts have been around for millions of years, and I'm just thinking the same thought that so many people thought before. Like, how many people have ever thought, I'm gonna kill this son of a bitch? Now, you didn't do it, because you didn't believe you're really gonna kill them, but you felt it, you said it, you were there, right? So we all have thoughts. It's only the stressful thoughts we believe that mess us up. So what I try to show people is, if you can start to realize, these thoughts have been around for millions of years. So what I want you to realize is thoughts are invisible waves. When you turn on TV, it takes invisible waves, and depending on the channel, you're gonna see a love story, or an adventure, or a drama, or a comedy, or a horror. The way you use your body determines which of those thought waves come through you. One moment you're pissed off, the next moment somebody makes you laugh, you change your body, you change the channel, you change what comes through you. So what I've tried to do in this area beautiful state is simple. First, identify where you're suffering. What's your favorite flavor? Are you a worrier? Are you a pissed off person?
Stressed, angry.
What is it you do? Second of all, decide you're gonna kill that monster while it's little. You're not gonna wait till it's Godzilla taking the city. You're gonna break the pattern. You start to feel the stress, you see it as thoughts going by, and then you focus on something to appreciate, enjoy, or love. Appreciation, love, and joy destroy suffering. You can't be grateful and angry simultaneously. It's possible. You can't be worried and fearful and grateful simultaneously. So I tell people gratitude is one of the emotions to cultivate that'll destroy the suffering. And that's what we teach people to do.
If you're not trying to get out of your shitty situation, then every day you're choosing to stay in it, and you can't complain about being given the choice you keep making. You know, one of my favorite quotes is, change happens when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of making a change. And I really do believe that. So when I hear people complain, knowing they're not changing, I think maybe it's not hurting them enough for them to fight to get out. Complaining causes negativity, which causes you to complain, which causes negativity. And there are a few actionable things you can do to immediately stop this negative cycle and to break out of it. And the first one is actually just changing your perception. You know, if you can't change it, then at least change the way you think about it. Someone said, the brain doesn't just observe the world, it projects a second story over everything we see. That story is our perception. We can complain rose bushes have thorns, or we can rejoice that thorn bushes have roses. Perception defines everyone's reality. The second thing is about your internal locus of control. Take responsibility. If you don't take responsibility, then you're choosing to be a victim of circumstance. And this victim mindset dilutes human potential, it kills action, and by not accepting personal responsibility for your own circumstances, you're greatly reducing the power you have to change it. And there are two primary choices we all make in life. It is to accept conditions as they are, or to accept the responsibility for changing them. Please choose the latter. And the last one, which is the most important of all, is making a change. Einstein said, as we all know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And for every action, we have a reaction. If you want a new reaction, you must perform a new action. I found in my life that change starts with a big decision and a tiny step. Today, right now, yesterday was the time to make that decision. It's time to take that step.
Henry Ford said it best in that book, Think and Grow Rich. You probably read it. He said, successful people make decisions quickly and that are slow to change their mind. Unsuccessful people hardly ever make up their mind, and when they do, they're constantly changing it back and forth, wishy-washy, like, do I want this, do I want that? They have so much indecision. Indecision is what kills confidence. And here's the thing, success, the ability to make great decisions in your life, comes from experience. And your experience usually comes from bad judgment. So it's not about making the right decision. Leaders, successful people don't always make the right decision, but they always make the decision right. That is, no matter what happens, they go for it, and then they know they're gonna figure it out in the end because they're clear about their outcome. But you gotta take decisions. You can't be paralyzed by fear and say, oh, what am I gonna do? So the first decision is what to focus on. Right now, as you're sitting there, you're probably on Facebook, on YouTube, something like that. You could be focused on this video. You could be focused on your iPhone. You could be focused on something that happened a year ago. You could be something that's gonna happen in the future. But like they say in that book, Eckhart Tolle says in The Power of Now, that your life is happening now. You're most powerful when you are operating in the now. Some people are trying to change things that happened in the past. They feel if that hadn't happened, or if she hadn't said that, or if I had done that before, I didn't mess up before. And their energy, their focus, even though they're talking to you, they're locked in your eyes right there, there's a part of them energetically that is focused on something in the past. Does that make sense? Their energy, their focus, every time anything bad happens, they're like, well, if this hadn't happened before, their mind always goes there. Is that they have a pattern, a habit of focus. And so the most powerful thing you can do is be focused in the moment, because this is where your life happens. And if you're trying to control things that are in the future or even in the past, you set yourself up for disappointment, because you can't change the past. And you can influence the future, but you can't change the future. You know, there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of things. Some people have a big impact on the world, but hey, there's times things are gonna happen. So you don't really know, but you still have to make decisions with absolute certainty. You have to have a vision within yourself. So the first decision you need to make every single day is, what are you gonna focus on? What are you gonna give your time and your attention to? That's decision number one.
Every second you spend thinking about what somebody else has is taking away from time that you could create something for yourself.
Yeah.
You're losing. You're losing because you're laying in your bed looking at somebody's fucking glamorous photoshopped picture of them doing something cool, and you're envious and you're jealous and you're impatient, and it's crippling your upside. You've got to deploy patience, and you've got to love the process. I'm addicted to the process of the battle scars, the setbacks. Macro patience, micro speed.
Life breaks everyone, and some are stronger in the places that broke.
We are going to go through trauma, but trauma is an opportunity to change
and to reorganize the elements that made up your life. When a person's mind is traumatized, it's like the story that they were telling themselves has ceased to be persuasive, right? And when a story stops being persuasive, it is disorienting, and that, I think, is what trauma is. The period between when your old story breaks apart because of this last straw on the camel's back thing. I mean, we're gonna continue to tell ourselves the old stories until it's so glaringly contradictory that it doesn't hold up. So trauma is the period between when that breaks down and when you, from the pieces of the old, build something new. And we'll never glorify the trauma itself, but recognize that in that period, you have a very unique opportunity that will only come along a handful of times in your life to reorganize the story that you tell about yourself to yourself.
Reticular activation system and our ability to rationalize our behavior is so pervasive and so powerful that our brains will rationalize almost anything that it thinks is in its best interest. So if a person gets to a point where they have become addicted to the laziness, what typically is going to happen is their reticular activation system is going to activate in such a way where they're going to justify the laziness. And what's really fucking psycho about this, and super fucking scary, this is scary shit to me, because I've seen this happen to friends of mine, is that they rationalize the laziness with a set of lies to themselves, or like half-truths. But then remember that any time that you lie to yourself, what happens as you build further beliefs on that foundation? More lies, more lies, more lies, more lies, and it becomes a web. Once the person has got addicted to that emotion of laziness, the emotion has entered into their body and it wants to self-perpetuate. So once that person gets in that emotion that they want to sustain it, they desperately want to sustain it, they will typically not come out of it. And actually, they become lost. They're lost now. Because what happens is that they fall too far off the path. And so there's been too much rationalization, too much lying to themselves about why they're doing it, that the only way, oh, and by the way, and this is further sustaining that addiction to the lazy emotions, the only way that they can come back is if they're forced out of it. Something forces them out of it, where it's just too painful to preserve the laziness and to preserve the lies that they would have to come out of it. And so, you know what's cool about hard work? It brings you back to reality again and again and again and again. Because when you take on projects and you have a purpose and you have passion about it, what happens is that you have these little lies and bullshits about how the world should be that you tell yourself, and then it doesn't work out and you're confronted with reality. When you're actually trying to do shit, you're continually confronted with reality. You're out of this white ivory tower bullshit mind state.
Looking at everything almost like a skill set. Everything is a matter of practice. I mean, of course, are you going to be the next Kobe or the next Michael Jordan or the next Albert Einstein or the next Elon Musk? That there might be, of course, a degree of luck and talent, especially in sports, but still, you can become pretty damn good at a lot of things if you put in the effort, if you put in the hours of deliberate practice.
I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve.
Going to be different for everyone, but we're all asking the same question. It's, how do I live a more meaningful life? And part of that has to do with just changing our focus to figuring out what's important.
On the other side of your pain is something good.
Getting comfortable with fear. Understanding that you can overcome fear, you can overcome doubt, those things that hold you back. Courage is the thing that drives through anything that's going to be in your way and try to hold you back. Courage is the thing that should be the driving factor to get you through whatever that is. You know, growing your tolerance for risk and understanding that failure is part of that process. Mistakes are part of that process. If you're not making mistakes, you're not moving forward. So in order for you to have that kind of mindset, to learn, you got to test different things. You got to go, test and pivot, and things are going to happen. Like, you need to have courage to try new things.
Work. That's the answer to all these questions.
setting really low expectations. And I'll tell you,
not what I was expecting you to say.
Well, not what a lot of people expect. And when I spoke to, say, Paulo Coelho, who's sold 100 million plus copies, The Alchemist, etc., you talk to Rick Rubin. So let me give his example first. When he has a musician who's stuck, great musician, but they've developed performance anxiety about songwriting for whatever reason. He will say, do you think you could get me one sentence or maybe 2 words that you like by tomorrow? That's it, 2 words. Can you do that for me? And he gives them a micro assignment. Best writing advice that I probably ever received, and I've received a lot of good writing advice, but I can get myself really wound up because I expect perfection to flow from my fingertips like magic, and that never happens. So then I beat the hell out of myself, and that makes me less likely to put pen to paper in the first place. I'll procrastinate, which is why if you write 2 crappy pages per day, you've won the day. That's a successful writing day. And that does a few things. It helps you to maintain enthusiasm because you're constantly winning. And of course, on many days, you'll write more than 2. You'll get to 2, then you go to 5 or to 10. But if you're on an off day, you write 2 crappy pages, even if you never use it, it's a successful day. And that, I think, for longer term projects and extended creativity is really important.
You know, you have to have the patience. You have to find beauty in the process of building something and find beauty in the journey and understand that the end result is not really the most beautiful part of it. And so it's having that patience.
I mean, it takes a long time to become an overnight success, right? And I think for the both of us and everybody we know that we admire and who's achieved anything, they've been at this a long time and they've been talking at it. And by the way, they weren't great at the beginning. Go watch early interviews of Steve Jobs, right? Early interviews of Steve Jobs are fantastic. Terrible. And he actually in one of them says, I need to go throw up because he's so nervous about talking on camera. He's terrible. And the point is he practices, he gets better, but he does it out loud. And I think the idea of hiding until it's perfect, it's a fool's game. I think you put yourself out there, you start, you practice out loud, then you get feedback, and you grow.
You counterpunch. You adjust.
You put it out there.
I would say the one thing that you may be referring to that I talk about a lot is it's tough to come out the gate at 22 and say this is the definitive thing. Here's my advice. I think talking to the world about your truth,
what you believe,
correct, is the game.
Is the game.
You know, your point of view on the world and like what you believe and where you come from, that's gold. Your process. That's why I talk a lot about documenting instead of creating. It's just your truth. But I agree with you. I mean, there's no substitute for doing the amount of people that wait for the perfect thing and then never do anything.
You know the most beautiful thing when you're young and you think you have something to contribute is to admit that you don't know everything, admit that you're learning.
Trying to get people to think, like, wait a minute, am I doing the thing that I want to do? Or is it cultural pressure from my parents, pressure from the mortgage and the family to do some other thing? Right. And it just, lo and behold, there's a lot of people for whom that has been a bigger shaper of what they're on their path to do, as opposed to the thing that they actually want to do. It's certainly, there's always a feeling, and that's the thing that we are taught to ignore feelings. I think we've done a terrible job culturally, not just in the US, but in the West. We've done a very bad job of cultivating one's desire, expectation, ability to listen to our intuition. And it was, we all have different paths, some through sort of grief, some through achievement, some through struggle, to start to listen to, we all have that compass.
Because often in life, we know what to do, but we don't do what we know. And another way that's been said is common sense isn't always common practice. And sometimes our intuition is screaming at us, but the demands of the day, the distractions in life are pulling our mind in a million different directions. And our psychology, our brains, our intuition is so drained that sometimes that noise makes it really hard for us to listen to our own hearts. There was this scene in this movie, Shawshank Redemption. And it's very symbolistic in a lot of ways, a lot of metaphors into the scene. And it's shortly after Andy Dufresne, Tim Robbins' character, escapes out of prison. And he literally climbs through a river of shit to come out to freedom on the other side. Listening to Morgan Freeman's character, Red, talk about how much he missed his friend and how much the place had changed without him there. But then he said this line: some birds just can't be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. That's you. So if you're hearing this and you've been in a cage and imprisoned by your circumstances, your life, habits, patterns, environment, relationships, whatever it is, realize you're too big for that. And it might take climbing through a river of shit for you to find your freedom. But the journey is worth it. Don't let anything stop you. Keep pushing.
Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. This guy's very fulfilled. That's why he works 24 hours a day. His whole hustle is that it fulfills him. Same thing with me. If you don't find what fulfills you, all the achievement's worthless. Money is not going to make you happy. It'll give you resources, it'll give you tools, but you got a 2 million year old brain that's always looking for what's wrong because it's trying to make you survive. If you're going to override that, you've got to learn what it is that's going to fulfill you most. And if you discover that and you pour all of your juice into that, forget the money. The money will be fine, but what you really will have is an extraordinary life. That's what this character has done for himself because he lives it every single day. I live it every single day. There's nothing short of that that's going to give you what you want.
The question is, what filters are you using to make decisions? Are you making decisions based on the financial rewards? Are you making decisions based on how easy the work will be? I mean, and so if you're only chasing the mighty dollar, then you will have jobs that'll pay you a little more than the last, but are you enjoying yourself? And I talked to a guy recently who was he's in bad shape. Like he really hates his life and he's really depressed and he doesn't know what to do. And so we were going through all his old jobs, you know, and I said, give me a job that you've loved. And he hadn't. Every single job he's chosen out of college, he picked because of the money. And if something offered him more somewhere else, he took it, you know, regardless. And the amazing thing is he plateaued because if you're only chasing the result, if you're only chasing the thing that makes it easy, right? Then eventually you will get bored or they'll get bored of you, right? And you plateau. In other words, chasing the almighty dollar, if that's your only thing, it eventually flattens out. Whereas if you're chasing the thing that excites you, the human beings to be around, the work that excites you, the stuff that, you can get passionate about, you know? The irony is you'll actually make way, way more, right? Because you're excited and they appreciate your excitement and they reward your excitement and you're better at your work because you want to work harder and all of that stuff. You don't have to strain to work harder. So decision making is simply a matter of filters, you know? And so I've made decisions in my life that I would rather be happy than right. I'd rather do good than get rich. And so the decisions I make put me in positions where when I leave any engagement, when I leave any meeting, I feel that I've contributed, right? Rare are the times anymore where you walk away going, just think of the money, just think of the money, think of the money, you know? Because it doesn't feel nice. And the experience I have, I don't enjoy traveling to them and I don't enjoy traveling home. Wherever I have an amazing experience, I am looking forward to getting there and I'm excited when I leave.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just decision making is just a matter of what filters you use.
Because this is what messes this up. You can be a billionaire and be miserable.
This is the operating system, baby.
We're the only creatures on the planet that can think a thought and make ourselves miserable, or think a thought and make ourselves euphoric. So take control of your mind.
The brain is kind of like a muscle. And specifically, there's a part of the brain that we really care about. It's the part that's doing self-control. So if you think about it, in simple way to look at it is that you start running. You go running. The first mile, your legs say, let's run. And the brain that controls them says, let's run. And another part of the brain says, no problem at all. After 1 mile, your legs say, it's a little bit painful, but the other brain that controls them say, keep going. After 10 miles, the legs say, I want to quit. And the other part say, no, keep going. And there's like a battle there. And at some point, you're going to break. Now, when you're going to break depends on a lot of things. Your muscles, but it also depends on this kind of control coming from the front of your brain that overrides your experience, your pain.
There's a banality to being an entrepreneur. There is a willingness to suffer to being an entrepreneur, to being a great mom. Like whatever it is that you're trying to do, suffering is involved. And it literally, like the being able to extend your break point is what it's about.
We all face those moments. When the alarm buzzes at 6 a.m., we set the alarm at 10 p.m., and suddenly in the morning we're different people. Like we're not the person who wants to wake up anymore, and it's the same brain that set the alarm at 10 p.m., but now suddenly at 6 a.m. we're not the same guy. This is a moment like that. We have to make a choice. When we're going running, when we're about to eat a cake, there's like a tasty cake and we're on a diet. and we say, oh, I shouldn't eat the cake, but there's a conflict. And now is the moment where those two parts of the brain come to life. And the more you know about yourself, the more you're aware of those situations, the better you can do in controlling them. And the more you know about yourself, you can do better in all of those tasks. And that's kind of the ultimate thing. That's why we're here. To know that it's in your capacity to change.
When you want to excel at something, what must you have? Did I just hear somebody say passion in the audience? You know what passion is? Passion is an emotion. It's an emotion without an action. Passion will get you nowhere. Inner drive will get you nowhere unless you act on it. You have to act on your passion. You have to act on your inner drive. Don't let those feelings stay inside of you. You got to know what to do with them. You got to know how to make them work in order to get what you want. Don't keep it inside. Remember, the mind controls the body. The body does not control the mind. What makes these guys special and successful in everything they do is not their physical gifts, it's their mental toughness. They have the ability not to think when everyone else is thinking. Decide, commit, act, succeed, repeat.
I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to fall over, make a mistake. That oftentimes cripples people on the onset of getting into anything. The first time I ever picked up the DJ decks was horrible now, but I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of that feeling. It actually propels me and works quite the opposite. Being able to look at an opportunity and go, is that going to take me further or not? You know, some people don't have that. You won't. It's something you develop. You know, that's why most times out of 10, any head of a company has been doing it for a long time, because they inherently can make a decision in the blink of an eye. But you have to learn that. The other thing that's important, I think, is to keep your head down. You know, keep your head down. Like when I swim, I've got 25 laps. Guaranteed, if I look up and start counting those laps, I'm petered out by 15. If I put my head down and keep working away and work at technique, work at internal rhythm, work at, I hit that length, I don't even know what length I'm on, guarantee you I'll look up and it'll be 20 and 2 more, 3 more to go. And that's a very simple device, but I think people find themselves incrementally checking how far they've got. And that, you know, when you compare it to anybody else or whatever, it's just it's a recipe for disaster. Just keep banging on, you know, that's the most important. I think mountain climbers will probably tell you the same thing, you know, there's no point looking, the difference between climbing 100 feet and climbing 500 feet is a point of view. You won't know you're at the top until you get there, pal. And that's what you need to remember. So that's, you know, part of my mechanism of dealing with sort of, you know, just getting there. Just don't look down.
All right, success mindset number 3. I don't run from mistakes, I learn from them. Oh, man, this is the great killer of dreams. The idea that making a mistake is a mistake. Think about this for a minute. Can you really think of one invention? Don't tell me, just try to think of it. Think of one invention that's been made without a series of potentially catastrophic mistakes, mishaps, or misfires leading to that idea being thrust out into the world. Mistakes are the necessary requirement in order to improve oneself, in order to improve one's business, in order to improve your thoughts. You have to be mistaken in order to eventually be corrected. A lot of us see these mistakes as bruises to our ego, like I made this mistake, so it means this about me, or like I did this wrong, so I'm not going to do this other thing right. We take a lot of ownership for these mistakes, and then at the same time, when we end up doing well, sometimes we don't attribute that to ourselves. We say, oh, well, that was lucky, or oh, this other person helped me. We have a hard time attributing where our success comes from and why we fail. But what you need to understand is that your mistakes aren't you. Your mistakes are singular events that, in the end, don't really mean anything. But what they can do for you is they can teach you. Mistakes can teach you what you're doing wrong, obviously, but mistakes can also teach you what you're doing right. And when you tune in to the mistakes that you're making, you can chart a path that avoids them and also moves towards the things that you want. But you have to be open to learning from them first. And once you are, it's going to be much easier to navigate the world in a way that makes sense to you and also gets you the results that you want. Successful people know that mistakes are essential to moving forward, and sometimes they even seek out mistakes, right? This is a contrarian way of thinking. They seek out mistakes in order to get success faster because they know that every mistake they make now is one mistake they won't make later. In fact, when I was interviewing the founders of Barefoot Wine, which is one of the biggest wine brands in the world, they said that they actually kept a journal of all the mistakes they made and wrote them down so they'd never make them again. And you can bet by the end of their careers, that journal was full of things that they did once, maybe twice, but that once they eliminated those things from their routine, well, they were just left with a flawless procedure. So look for the mistakes and learn from them, but never be scared of them, and never feel bad if you make them, because you're supposed to be making them. That's the point.
There are positives in every situation that we go through. And even in the entrepreneurial world, we're trained. I think that's another thing that's really benefited me is like failure. I think it's more of our egos that we don't want to say like failure exists. It's like, no, failure doesn't exist. It's a learning moment. No, you screwed up, you failed. Like, let's just own that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And yes, you should learn from those failures. But the things that I learned through the abuse that I went through were incredibly powerful. I mean, my ability to withstand life, like, good luck knocking me down. Like that's not an ego or a cocky thing. It's just like, good luck. And what's cool is I didn't know any of this stuff when I was a kid until I was about 16, 17. I started like reading encyclopedias on the human body and mind. But even then we had no clue. And now like all this science is coming out about energy and positive and negative and chemical hormones being stored in the brain and like memories actually releasing endorphins, like all this stuff's happening. And it's like, wow, cool. Like the monks had something. Like, you know, it's like we're like going and proving these very, 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 very ancient rituals to be scientifically like accurate. And who knew where they got their inspiration? But regardless, we're now proving that this rewriting of the story, this telling, you know, yourself and believing something different literally changes the chemical makeup in your body, which releases different hormones and different endorphins, which then allows you to have a different, you know, complete outlook. If you're unconfident, you don't feel sexy and you don't feel this way, that's how you're going to come across. Not because that's what you really maybe are with skin and, you know, skin and all that, but that's the chemicals that you're releasing.
Let's face it, it is human nature to want to be liked, loved, and accepted. However, if you worry too much about the opinion of others, you run the real risk of being held hostage and through fear, never becoming the person you were supposed to be. And nothing scares me more than the thought that something so insignificant could have such a significant impact over someone's life. The rise of social media, connectivity, and the internet has created new problems for this new generation. Your life is now public. Everybody knows your business, and therefore everybody, unfortunately, has an opinion on it. It's now harder than ever to break away from the crowd without the crowd questioning or criticizing your decision to do so. It's harder to be you and easier to be just like them than ever before. Here are 3 reasons why you cannot let the fear of the opinion of others influence your decisions. Number 1, you're gonna die someday. At the end of the day, as morbid as it might sound, we are all going to die someday. And if you truly embrace that, as so few of us are able to, you'll stop being so precious about things that aren't going to matter or that we aren't going to take with us when our time is up. If you imagine life as a casino, where in 10 minutes' time you have to give all of your chips back anyway, why on earth would you play it so safe and care so much about what other people think when you're handing all of your chips back to the casino regardless? If you knew you were going to die tomorrow, would you really care what people thought of your decisions today? What if you knew you were going to die in a week from now, or a month from now, or 10 years, or 50 years? Well, you are. So it's time to stop acting like you're going to live forever. The casino is waiting. Number 2, regret. A famous Australian nurse interviewed people as they laid on their deathbed, and she found that the single most common regret of the dying was wishing they had the courage to live a life true to themselves and not the life that others expected of them. Because when people realize that their life is almost over and look back on it, I imagine they have a retrospective clarity that only exists in that precious moment. I imagine everything pales into insignificance and only that which truly matters is able to remain on the mind. Most people had not honored even half of their dreams at that stage, and they had to die knowing that it was due to choices they had made or not made, or due to fear of the opinion of others that they had done so. It is your life. Nobody else can tell you what's best for you, and only you will have to deal with the consequences. So make your own decisions. Number 3, people pleasing is impossible. You can't please all of the people all of the time. It is impossible to live up to everyone's expectations, and in doing so, you'll fail to please the most important person of all, yourself. And the reality is, people usually don't care as much about you as they might let on. There's a famous quote that says, we would worry less about what other people think of us if we realized how rarely they do. As humans, we tend to live our life through our own ego, and unless something directly impacts us, we don't care about it as much as we pretend to. So it's time to stop caring about what others think, because they probably don't care that much anyway. Once you give up catering to other people's opinions, you will find your own happiness and discover who you truly are.
You have to persevere when you're frustrated. And specifically, really perseverance referring to patience. You just have to be more patient with your life. I know social media makes it hard. You're on YouTube right now. I know you're probably on Instagram and Facebook, and you see all your friends who are doing cool things and making it seem like you're always a couple steps behind. But the reality is, there's no timeline where you have to be at a certain place at a certain time. Everyone's on their own trajectory. And in order to be able to make it through those frustrating points where you just don't see yourself making progress, you have to have perseverance. And that's a skill you can build up. It's a skill you can build over time. And you start doing that by just realizing that there's no rush. Whether you get $1 million today or it takes you 10 years, it doesn't really matter. What are you trying to do? You trying to buy a Rolex today? What's the point? Think about why you're doing this. And once you realize that you really want it because you want to feel better about yourself, you'll also realize that you can start feeling better about yourself today, right? You can have patience with yourself now so that you can persevere for the long haul. Because what ends up happening, those who don't have perseverance, well, they burn out. They burn out in the first 6 months, first year, first 2 years. And by the time you come around a couple years later, you ask, what happened to your business? It blew up. What happened to that relationship? It blew up. What happened to that prestigious university and that scholarship? It blew up. Because they didn't have perseverance.
Sometimes we don't have problems, so we invent stuff to be upset about, right?
Right.
And he goes like, there are parts of the world where our problem today is they're going to chop all our heads off, right? That's a real problem, right?
Yes.
It's not as bad as, having to choose a language on the ATM machine, or that, it's raining a little too much today in New
Absolutely.
York. Right?
Yeah.
It's and so we look at life in very interesting ways. We think about life in a way, in my view, that causes a lot of suffering. When I was searching for happiness, I was very unhappy, even though I was successful.
Mm-hmm.
And then as an engineer, I realized that, okay, I would never find what I'm looking for unless I define it properly, right?
What happiness is.
What happiness is. And
what's the equation to happiness, right? Yeah.
And you'll be surprised,
Most people don't know what it is for them.
Absolutely.
And they keep searching and searching, but they're not sure. They think maybe this will be it, this will be it, this will be it. But then it's like, oh, I got that and I'm still not happy.
Exactly.
Still not enough.
Exactly.
Still not enough.
And so if you don't know what it is, how do you expect to find it, right?
One of the great secrets in life to becoming successful, whether it's in a business, whether it's working with someone or for someone or in your own personal life, and I learned this selling encyclopedias door to door in my early 20s, is be prepared in life for a lot of rejection. Because if you're prepared for a lot of rejection, it comes, you don't get turned off, you don't get disappointed, like, well, I'm not gonna do this anymore, no one thinks it's a good idea. It's like, I say selling encyclopedias, knock on 100 doors, they slam them in your face. You must be just as enthusiastic on door number 101 as door number 1. Be prepared for a lot of rejection. Whether it's in their personal life, that someone says, you're too old, you're too fat, you're too young, you're not gonna do anything other than yes. You got holes in your nose, you got things coming out your ears. Whatever is other than yes, this is wonderful, realize that's gonna happen in life. As soon as people know that, when something goes wrong, they look at a piece of paper, oh yeah, that reminds me. Sometimes you don't know what the hell to do. You're just out there doing it, and you just kind of learn from your own experience or go with whatever your heart tells you to do. And if something goes wrong, you ask somebody, God, here's what I said, was that right? You just kind of improve yourself. But many times if you're there, you don't have an answer, go with your heart. Give an answer, just say, I really don't know, but I'm gonna find out and I'm gonna get back to you.
In today's environment, focus is more important than how smart you are, how much you know. With people you know, who you connect with. Your focus is the thing that is going to determine whether you're going to be successful or not. Focus in your IQ, as Cal Newport says, and definitely check out his book called Deep Focus. And create blocks of time in your day where you're just doing one thing. Can you do that? Can you create a block of time, let's say an hour, maybe even start with like 30 minutes, where you're literally going to be doing just one thing? Whatever that thing is, whatever your one thing is, start creating a block of 30 minutes to an hour and just do that. See if you can do that. Leave your phone in another room. Disable everything that is on your computer that is triggering you. See if you can pull that off. If you can't, that's a really good sign that your brain has been trained to be distracted. And the powerful thing about the human brain is that we can rewire, we can relearn, we can master any skill that we put deliberate practice in.
We do need to build upon what has already been built. We need to follow the path of the masters. And it's just like, I think, learning how to play music. And you've heard the quote before that says, don't die with your music still inside of you. We all have music inside of us. But when we go to weddings and karaoke bars and we go out sometimes, we hear people playing the music and singing other people's songs. We hear the cover band. Cover bands never become famous because cover bands are not rare. They're playing other people's music. And in life, if we're following the same thought patterns, communicating the same things that somebody else says, you know, listening to Tony so much, I talk about what he communicates a lot, you know, as part of my job, my career, and he's had such a huge influence on my life. But it's really about finding our own music. And so as we need to be affected by this concept of modeling and actually apply it, we need to make sure that we are not infected with the modeling of others, especially big personalities, whether they be famous people, whether they be people in your family, friends. You need to realize that you have this unique voice inside of you, and there is nothing more valuable than your unique self. You see, there are more pounds of gold and diamonds and rare metals in the world than there are pounds of you, no matter what the metal is. You are rare, you are unique, you are one of a kind, you are special. And so as you go out into the world, learning how to play other people's music, modeling some of the other masters in the world who have come before you, yes, you need to do that, but don't lose sight of yourself because you have this unique voice. You are here on this earth school having your body, your life, your relationships, your experience of life that is completely unique in you. You are unique to you, and you are getting insights that are valuable to the world, more valuable than anything else, but also extremely valuable to your own sense of self and your own sense of growth and evolution. So you want to act powerfully, and all those crazy thoughts and ideas that you have inside of your head, you need to embrace them. Because often in life we criticize ourselves. We have, this fatigue, self-judgment fatigue, persona fatigue, trying to be like somebody else, decision fatigue about who we are, what we want to do, how we're going to communicate. And these things drain energy. They fatigue us for being our natural self, from really being into that state of flow. And so as you flow, as you communicate, as you put yourself out there, you need to model the patterns of others, but you need to really take pride and have certainty and love and appreciation and gratitude for all that you are and all that you've been through and all that you're experiencing in your life, even the most painful moments, because those are sculpting your soul. Those things are meant to be here for you to go through, not to go through, but to grow through. And as you grow, you evolve, you become bigger, you share your experience, and then other people say, wow, because you went through that, because you did this, because you shared that, you make other people's lives better, and then they model you. And you get to have this sense that is priceless where you say, wow, my life matters. All that I've been through and all that I am, it matters to the world because now I give back. And other people can model and then eventually find their own unique voice. So it's a constant state of evolution. You need to build upon the masters.
Here's the thing, we are the first generation that have grown up with the internet as part of our everyday life. And we're the first generation that have grown up with the internet literally attached to us. And we're the first generation that are always on. And if you look at the data, anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues have risen at an alarming rate in the last 10 years. And they're more prevalent in this generation than any generation in human history. And if you look at the data, there's some terrifying statistics. Looking at searches for anxiety on Google alone, there's a huge increase in people searching things like, do I have anxiety, from 2010 onwards. What happened in 2010? For the vast majority of young people, our lives are ran 24/7 by mobile notifications. And for those without notifications on, a mixture of clever habit-forming design, the fear of missing out, social validation, and chemical releases in our brains will undoubtedly have us coming back to social media 20 to 30 times a day regardless. It's that exact addiction to social media that has you watching me on Facebook right now, and the smartphone is just the modern-day digital syringe, a syringe that gives you a little kick of dopamine every time you log in. And Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp are the biggest drug dealers in the world. A study from Harvard showed that social media usage fires up the same part of the brain that lights up when you're taking addictive substances like cocaine. And just like heroin, it's often not the feeling you get when you're using it that's so unpleasant, it's the feeling of being without it that makes us so anxious. Social media allows us to compare everything, and we do. Relationships, our diet, our figure, our hair, clothes, holidays, lifestyles, but not just with our friends, with total strangers and celebrities, with Kim Kardashian. These are false comparisons. We're comparing filtered, fabricated highlight reels to our own raw behind-the-scenes footage. And that's why studies have found that people who compare themselves with others on social media are more likely to feel depressed than anyone. If you are predisposed to anxiety, it seems that pressures from social media can act as the tipping point, making you feel more insecure and more overwhelmed than you would without. But it's not just social media, it's the 24/7 connectivity that's having an adverse effect on our mental well-being. If you imagine this for a second, our grandparents grew up in a time where their whole world was the room they were currently sat in and the people and problems within it. That was the size of their world. It was the size of their front room. To this generation, when we pick up our smartphone, our world is enormous. There are billions of people in the room, millions of problems, feelings of anxiety, inadequacy, terror attacks, political tensions, fear, sadness. Every person you've ever dated is in the room, and their new partner's there too. Our best friends are there. The person we're attracted to is there. Our family's there, their family's there, every celebrity's there, and gold stars are being handed out in the form of likes and followers to those that look the best, are the funniest, and say the most interesting things. What an incredibly hard world for a young person trying to find themselves to grow up in. So for all it's good, social media is an incredibly new and dangerous world. And someone once said that anxiety, stress, and worry are all forms of fear, and they are caused by too much future and not enough present. It has never been more important to be in the present, to find time to disconnect and to live in the moment. After all, now, in the real world, is the only thing we actually have.